So we've got 3 trials: Charlottesville, Rittenhouse, and Ahmaud Arbery. I want to view these 3 trials through the lens of class. And I know people are tired of hearing me talk about class, but it's necessary. It's necessary to understand. We have these 3 cases, which are part of a long line of racially charged cases in the country that probably go back before O.J. Simpson in some cases. But I think the big ones are like O.J. Simpson, George Zimmerman. Now we have Derek Chauvin, and we've got the 3 today: Charlottesville, Rittenhouse, and Ahmaud Arbery. These are examples of aggressive moralization. I saw something in the news recently about, what was that guy's name? Travis Scott. Like 8 people died at his concert, and he was still singing while the people were dying, and there's all this satanic imagery. And so someone responded to this criticism, and they said, all this, stuff about satanic imagery, that's a satanic panic. And a satanic panic, if you're not aware, is this kind of derogatory term that was applied to Christians in the 1980s, where they were getting upset about shifts in the culture, shifts away from Christianity, open toleration of Satanism, open toleration of atheism, open toleration of LGBTQ, and so on and so forth. And so in their frustration with the shifting culture, they tried to latch on to narratives that would give them a coherent physical manifestation of something, like an egregore almost, like a demonic coalescence of all the emotions that they were feeling. And this is basically the origin of QAnon, because you had all these stories running around, urban legends of like secret underground tunnels under schools and things like that. And it doesn't really matter to me so much the truth or the falsehood of the individual claims. You could view them, you could dismiss all of them, you could investigate them. That's not really the point. The point is that there was a psychological need on the part of these Christians in the 1980s to take all of their fear and anxiety and negativity surrounding the loss of their religious dominance and this feeling that they could sense that Christianity in America was being destroyed, and they wanted to attach it to certain individual events or certain satanic rituals or practices, when in reality it might have been more banal than that. It might have just been, you lost a culture war and now nobody respects you, and people blaspheme Jesus in the media, no one really cares anymore. So in the case of these racial cases, these like, O.J. Simpson, George Zimmerman, George Floyd, Ahmaud Arbery, Charlottesville, Rittenhouse, these are all examples of the shoe being on the other foot. So instead of having a satanic panic where a declining Christian majority is anxious about its decline and coming up with boogeymen to blame the decline on and to try to mobilize their side, it's a form of aggressive moralization to say, they're Satanists under the schools and we have to defeat them. And it's a way, when you create an enemy, you create a countervailing force. If I tell you there's a dude outside with a gun, all of a sudden your fight or flight instincts kick in and you say, okay, if you're kind of an aggressive person, you're going to say, okay, it's fight time. And when you feel that it's fight time, your testosterone increases, your adrenaline increases. Instantly, your strength goes up, your speed goes up, your stamina goes up, your endurance goes up. The energy in your body increases, not calorically, but psychologically. You're able to access energy that wasn't there before. So when you feel threatened, when you feel an enemy is at the gates, and when that enemy is a caricature of all these, taps into all these sort of instinctual fears that we have, fears of the demonic, fears of the sadistic, fears of the satanic, right? When we say satanic, we mean the monstrous, we mean the sociopathic. When you conjure up an image of that, it engages people's adrenaline, engages their testosterone. When they were, even women, it engages their amygdala, their fear, and it activates people, it energizes people. So this is a cultural response, true or false, real or fake. When you feel that you're under threat, it activates your group. It activates your group, it mobilizes your group toward whatever it is. In the ancient world, it'd be toward warfare. Now it's toward like social activism. And so, George Floyd was this example where you saw the whole media come together to pillory, excuse me, I said George Floyd, I meant George Zimmerman. George Zimmerman, they said he's a racist white man, when of course he was Hispanic. And, the evidence that he was racist is pretty weak. And, the child he was defending himself against was actually kind of a 17-year-old criminal, pretty big, tall football player, flashing guns in his photos. And, but none of that really mattered. The facts didn't matter because the need was to create a boogeyman of the racist white man who's hunting down black children to execute them at random. That was the need, and whatever was necessary to pervert the facts was permissible, and people believed it as a matter of dogmatic virtue. That in the same way that if you're a Catholic and you go to Mass and you say, this bread and wine is literally the body and blood of Christ, and I don't care what science or anybody else says, in the same way, George Zimmerman was, through transmogrification or transubstantiation, he changed races from Hispanic to white. And, George I'm messing up all the names. Trayvon Martin, transmogrified from his 17-year-old self back to his 13-year-old self. And so in a sense, in the naked legal sense, Zimmerman won the trial. But in the larger cultural phenomenon, it was a trial run, and it was an attempt to mobilize a white priest class. I really do believe that this concept we have in this country, and we've had, I guess, since the 1960s or before, of race war, of racial conflict between black and white people, is just patently untrue and couldn't be further from the truth. The people I saw who were the most active and upset about something like the George Zimmerman case or everything that has come afterward are white liberals. And they are upset not because they're so altruistic and they just love black people so much, but it's because they view their principal enemy as the white warrior class, the white proletariat. And they want to do everything possible to attack these people, including allying with blacks or Hispanics who they have a level of patronizing paternalism toward these groups where they view them as non-threatening, ineffective victims, people who can't take care of themselves. And so they're fundamentally not threatened by these groups. Now, at 2 a.m, walking to a gas station alone at night, maybe they feel differently. But conceptually, in terms of national politics, voting, policies, the mechanisms and levers of power, if you're a quote-unquote white liberal, I'm really saying you're part of a white priest class, a white merchant class, and this is who you're afraid of. Now, what people like to do is people on the right, when they say they want to racialize things, they want to say, no, it's not about different classes of white people fighting each other for political dominance. Really, this is all about ethnic genetic interests. So when you point out to them that black supremacy doesn't exist, that black people didn't invent the NAACP, that black people don't, control the Democratic Party or anything like that, they'll say, well, actually, it's Jews, right? Now, the funny thing about Jews that I want to point out here is that when we ask ourselves, what is the principal difference between Jews and other white groups? Because I think the idea that Jews cluster more closely with Middle Eastern peoples than with Europeans, I think that there's a very weak evidence for that. I think most of the mainstream evidence says that basically they cluster with other Europeans, as when compared to Middle Easterners, who would be the next closest group, right? But whatever, put that aside. What's the big difference? When even go as far as to say Arabs, what's the difference between Arabs and white people? Well, you'd say, I guess, Islam or something like that. But with Jews, really the principal difference is the lack of a warrior class. Now, Zionism stands out as the big middle finger to that idea, and that's how it was deliberately developed. You look at the origins of Zionism in a movement called Muscular Judaism, which was a self-hating, in a sense, Jewish anti-Semites who did not like the fact that there was this diaspora, and Jews had this concept of Yiddishkeit, which was about being sort of conscientious and really, I would say, values of a priest and a merchant class. And so Zionism was supposed to solve this problem, but of course, clearly it hasn't. Zionism has in many ways failed. And I think we're going to look back on the history of Zionism in 50 to 100 years and say, well, that was an aberration in 2,000 years of Jewish history. And I think there will be a point at which we are in a post-Zionist era. It's kind of hard to see that, given that so much foreign policy currently revolves around Israel. But I think in a grand historical scale, that's how we're going to view it anyway. So all of this is to say that the interests of white liberals, meaning the white priest class, the white merchant class, are fully in alignment with the interests of Jews, because Jewish people are essentially white liberals par excellence. That is, they are a group of, you want to say they're not European, they are European. I mean, for historical purposes, they are European, who are non-Christian in the way that many Jews many white liberals are non-Christian. And they don't have a warrior class, and they have a priest class, and they have a merchant class, and they fear the pogrom. They fear someday these white warriors, these white peasants, are going to rise up and attack them. This is the fear of the Jewish community. This is the fear of the white liberal, that someday these white men with guns are going to come and they're going to attack, right? Is this realistic? No, in the same way that the Satanic Panic wasn't realistic, in the same way that the George Zimmerman trial wasn't realistic. But the thing I want people to understand is that when you're dealing with a religious movement, you're not dealing with reality as it is. You're not dealing with statistics and facts and empirical data. You're dealing with a should. You're not dealing with an ontology, you're dealing with a deontology. And so these people want to destroy what they view as their class opposition. They don't care about the particular facts of a particular case. They don't care to what extent racial differences are environmental versus hereditary. What they care about is about destroying their class enemies. And they'll say anything and do anything to achieve that. And if that means internalizing a series of rhetorically confusing shibboleths surrounding race, of saying, oh, I hate whiteness, oh, I hate the white race, And in their head, what they're really saying is, I hate the white warrior class. They'll do that. The white warrior class can't understand those shibboleths because the white warrior class is by its nature literalistic and concerned with the outward form of the aesthetic, whereas you look at the New Testament, Jesus gives all these examples of these sort of semi-paradoxical things like, you have to lose your life to gain your life, and give unto Caesar that which is Caesar's, and all these things that can be interpreted every which way, and it's kind of confusing. It's all these code words. The warrior class can't handle this. The warrior class just kind of shrugs their shoulders and says, are you on my team? Are you against me? Okay, if you're on my team, great. Whatever you say, preacher. They don't really understand these things. But the priest class utilizes these things as weapons of war, as markers of identity, as ways to differentiate positions in a priestly hierarchy. The more you're able to attack whiteness as a white person, the higher status you are as a white person. And if you're not able to do this, you're sort of outing yourself as having a warrior class mentality of being a literalistic, superficial, tactical, logistical, strategic thinker. You're not capable of this kind of esoterica, of these kind of word games. People accuse me a lot of engaging in word salad, and this is the typical response of the warrior class thinker, where everything should just be ones and zeros and direct logistics and yes or no kind of statements. When you introduce all of these social signifiers into your speech, these are tribal identifiers. These are, look at me, I'm high status, I have not just a complex vocabulary, but I have the right kind of vocabulary that references these idioms that you pick up in academia, and that means I have a certain status. And so there's all this esoteric kind of social intelligence, emotional intelligence, stuff that's going on under the surface amongst all of these supposed dogmatic statements about, the nature of race or sex or gender or whatever like that. So when a white liberal comes to you and says, I hate white people, what they're really saying is, I hate the white warrior class because it threatens my tribal interest as a member of the white priest class / the white merchant class. And so, the Jewish culture and white liberal culture has a lot of overlap in this case in terms of the class incentives that are going on. And I think that's why they are fundamentally non-antagonistic to each other, not because somehow Jews have brainwashed white liberals into a self-destructive ideology, but that white liberals have tended toward, when Moldbug says, it's all the Calvinists, I think that is a lacking. I think that's lacking in the analysis. I think it's much simpler and has much more explanatory power not to say that, it's all the Calvinists' fault, because that is in a sense a kind of an ethnic hatred of a particular religious tradition. I don't see it that way. I see Calvinism as having a particular relationship with the priestly ideal, because in Calvinism and its development into Puritanism, everyone is supposed to read the Bible, and so everyone is supposed to be a priest, and everyone is supposed to interpret and take on a priestly mentality. You hear this in Judaism in the Old Testament, where it says that every Gentile in the world will tug at the clothing of the Jews and say, you are our priest. So this is the globalist dream of Jews in the Old Testament, that they will be the priest class of all the nations in the world. Not that they're going to exterminate the other nations, as would be like a warrior mentality, but that they're going to rule as a priest class. And this is the conception in Calvinism of the 144,000. And so that mentality, I don't think, is unique to Judaism. I don't think it's unique to Calvinism. I think it is the attitude of the priest class. And I think really, the sociologist, people call him a philosopher, but I think the sociology of Nietzsche is the best way to understand this. I differentiate from Nietzsche, and then I separate out the priest class and the merchant class from each other for a tripartite system, which I think better maps to a linguistic reconstruction of Indo-European sociology, of their conception that there are three distinct classes. It's not just two, being the warrior class and the priest class. So that's why I do that. But I think this is a good lens. I've said it many times before, but I guess we're just reiterating ourselves. So how do we view this? How do we view these trials? Well, let's look at the Zimmerman trial. Zimmerman won, but he kind of won the battle and lost the war, right? Whatever happens, if the defendants win in Charlottesville, the newspapers say, the Nazis won, and it's time to redouble our efforts, and we'll get them next time. If they lose, well, then they lose, and blood. The media smells blood, and so we'll redouble our efforts. Like sharks smelling blood, I guess. They'll go into a frenzy. So either way, right, these trends will continue. The desire to see the defendants win is this kind of conservative instinct of, everything's changing too fast, we need to slow it down. I don't believe in that. I don't believe in conservatism. I don't believe in looking at the religious fanaticism of the so-called left and saying that it just needs to slow down. I think that the only appropriate response to religious fanaticism is religious fanaticism. I don't think you make an argument with statistics or data or empirical facts. I think that is silly, ineffectual, inappropriate, and in the worst, it's a form of burying your head in the sand, and the sand in this case is the sandy desert of the data, where you can just hide there and say, if only Bill Gates knew about 1350, then he would be on our side. That's not how reality works. People have different incentives. Two people can look at the same data and say, this is terrible for one person and wonderful for someone else. If you're an Amazon worker, the fact that diversity decreases unionization is a bad thing, but if you're Jeff Bezos, it's a very good thing. And if you're part of the priest class journalist structure that's in a hierarchy with Jeff Bezos, then you think it's a great thing as well, because he's your boss and you work for him, and that's how your bread gets buttered. So whatever happens, we're going to get more of the same. The question is the speed. Are we going to get another 4 years of Donald Trump in 2024, and he's going to sort of slow things down or put a Republican spin on it? He did increase female participation in the workforce. He did increase the black female vote for the Republicans. He did increase the gay vote for the Republicans. So in many ways, he exacerbated these trends toward religious revolution in a way that the so-called left couldn't dream of, right? Even though they'll never give him credit for it, or he'll never be celebrated as a progressive president. That's effectively what he was. So I'm not in favor of conservatism. I don't think it's in any sense a solution. I think it is procrastination. I think it's delaying the inevitable. Because if you have secularists on the one side and religious fanatics on the other side, the religious fanatics win every time. And simply philosophizing about this and stating it as an empirical fact, and then sort of ignoring and refusing to participate in the struggle, I think is an act of cowardice. I think the people who and people could accuse me of doing this, and that's fine, but we just have to be truthful and honest about what's going on here. Again, I'm talking from the level of a sociologist of religion, of someone who's observing the real way that politics and power works, and I'm not just sitting on the sidelines as a statistician and going into fun facts about hereditarianism and HPD and whatever. I think that's fundamentally cowardly when Jared Taylor does it or anyone else. So I think you have two options. You can either be real about that and just choose to die, I suppose, or you can be real about it, and I hope you don't choose to die, and you can understand that religion is the only thing that can fight religion. So I'm not interested in creating a religion out of whiteness, because the religion we already have is a very white religion: white liberalism, white anti-racism, white merchant class, white priest class morality. You can call it Jewish or not, but I ultimately see the Jewish distinction as ultimately being a subset of class distinction, not a superset, not something that superordinates, but actually I don't view history through this ethnogenetic lens where tribes are written into stone, but actually tribes change over time. Tribes developed according to religions. That if you have a religion that tells you have to drink milk all the time, well, we see tribes develop lactose tolerance. You can change your ethnos. You can create ethnogenesis through religions. So that, to me, is the primary function, and the way that religion relates to class is very important. So you need to develop a priest class that is capable of dealing with what's going on. I've described before the difference between Catharism and alchemy with relation to the development of science and European spirituality coming out of the Magian or feudal age into the Renaissance and into the Enlightenment. That was a huge shift, and those were two very different strategies, one of which I think was successful and the other was unsuccessful. So, I think it's when you're not part of the billionaire class and you realize that they are this totalizing force that wants to monopolize all power and resources for themselves and shut you out, it's kind of hard to cooperate with those people. It's kind of hard to cooperate with somebody who, wants to steal all your resources and kill you. It's hard to see yourself on the same side as those people, and that's why I use the term deep left. People who have bought into a reactionary framing where if somebody attacks you on your whiteness, you have to defend yourself on those bounds, have a hard time understanding how you could, simultaneously reject that framing and at the same time not simply just be part of the mainstream. For them, it's this black and white, red tribe, blue tribe. There's two options. You're either for what the mainstream is doing, or you're against it in a very reactionary way. There's no independent path from there. And my argument is that, right now, that's correct. Right now, there is the mainstream religion of racial resentment, gender resentment, sexual resentment that is fueled by a merchant class and a priest class that is, primarily white and secondarily Jewish. And then you have the opposition being this conservative force of the white warrior class that doesn't know what's going on. It can't navigate this conflict, is constantly flailing and failing and falling behind. And it's kind of pathetic, and it's sad to watch. And these people, in a sense, are sometimes hopeless. I hope that's not true, but it does seem that way. It does seem that when someone's fighting you on a different generation of warfare, they're fighting you economically, financially, legally, psychologically, spiritually, religiously, and you're fighting back by saying, let's go kick Antifa butt in the streets. When that's the mentality, when someone's like, yeah, let's go start a street fight with Antifa in response to all that other stuff, it's kind of like, yeah, you are kind of hopeless. I don't really want to affiliate you. I don't really want to support you. I don't want to be on the same side as you, which is why I've basically discarded the right wing entirely and said, I'm on the deep left. But at the same time, it is not something I root for. I don't root for the destruction of these people. I hope some of them can be converted. I hope some of them can find a new religion. I don't think I'm the person to create that, but I'm, I guess, the person to tell you that you need to create that, or you need to find someone, you need to help me. If you can find someone who can help do that, please let me know, because I'm looking for them and I'm looking to support them. And a lot of people would make the case that it simply is about going back to Christianity. And again, if it is, it's a Christianity that looks completely different from the main line, because the main line is completely subsumed in the religion of racial resentment. So, if it's quote unquote going back, well, in a sense, it's going to look radically different from anything that people recognize from mainline Christianity. And so, for all intents and purposes, calling it Christianity is a little bit, to me, it just, in terms of the language that you're using, it's like saying we need to become Republicans. But when you say Republican, what you actually mean is we need to we need to make Plato's myth of the metals real, because that's what true republicanism is, right? Res Publica, the Republic by Plato. When I say we need to become Republicans, I actually mean we need to become radical, Platonic, the word that comes after. But, it's like, that's not what most people think of when you say Republican. So that's kind of how I feel about this label Christian. It's like, when people say we just need to be Christians, it's like, well, if you're using that word the way I think you're using it, then you're meaning something completely different and opposite to what most people are meaning. But I think things can be understood by understanding liberalism and understanding these religious movements and understanding Christianity. I certainly don't want to return to paganism or to some earlier, weaker form of religion that was defeated because it didn't work, because it wasn't strong, because it lost out. The right wing loves to talk about social Darwinism, but they don't love to talk about religious Darwinism, that different religions compete and some win and some lose, because some are better and some are worse. Because then they would have to admit that, liberals and atheists and so on, so-called secular people, snowflakes and whatnot, that these people have a certain power that they don't, that these people have a certain skill and aptitude that they don't, that maybe life isn't just about being a gritty lumberjack in the woods and self-reliant libertarian, but that there is something to being able to mobilize, moralize, aggressively signal, and tribalize along word salad, right? That's what I do. I do my word salad, and people absolutely hate it because I engage with people who are of that warrior mindset, who they don't want to hear the word salad. They want something simple and concrete, and they want aesthetics, and they want, let's bring back, whiteness. And I'm putting a, what am I putting in there? A horseshoe. I'm trying to think of, throwing a wrench. I'm throwing a wrench in the gears there. And that doesn't make anybody happy. It kind of makes everybody upset, and it's sort of a thankless. Maybe it's useless. Maybe there's no point in talking to those people. Maybe they'll never learn. But I do have sympathy. I do have empathy. I do believe they're real human beings, and they're deserving of a chance. And maybe I'm not the best communicator to get to those people, to reach those people, but I don't see anybody doing it. The SPLC isn't doing it. The SPLC isn't trying to stop hate. They're not trying to turn people away from these things. They're trying to radicalize people so they can make more money off of them. They promote these people so that they can fundraise off of them. They don't want to stop hate. They love the right. Every time they can say hate groups are rising, that means more money for them. I mean, they're complete grifters. It's a terrible thing. So there's literally nobody out there. All these quote unquote hope not hate, SPLC, anti-racist, all these people are grifters. They love right-wing radicalization. They love it. They fund it. They fuel it. They promote it. And so as far as I'm concerned, I don't know of anyone who's doing what I do, anyone who's actually attempting to say, hey, I know that you want truth and justice and order, and you want all these beautiful things, and you want to protect your family, and you believe that a reactionary solution to the left is going to give you those things, and I'm here to tell you it's not. Going back to some earlier form of whiteness is not an option, and you have to forge forward with a religious mindset, and that's a very difficult thing to do. You can't just sort of revert to some earlier form of secular ethno-nationalism. There's actually something much harder that you have to engage with, and it is more honest than mere statistics and, World War II propaganda or whatever. You can't just fall upon that template. It's got to be a little bit deeper. So I guess that in the final analysis, I got to say that whoever wins or loses in these trials, it's not going to change the outcome. There may be a sort of a conservative reaction where things are slowed down for a little bit. It's not going to change the outcome. People have to get religious. You can only fight a religion with religion. You either have to join the mainstream religion, join a different religion, but you can't maintain this this neutrality and this secularity and data-driven HBD stuff. That doesn't work. So maybe there's a lesson to be learned here. I hope some people do learn lessons. I feel bad because I can sympathize with people's sense of loss, people's sense of disorientation. They're looking for answers, they're scrambling, and they're finding a lot of bad stuff, like Donald Trump, was the obsession for a few years there. And that was a mistake, and some people are waking up to that, and some people are plugging their ears and, doing the QAnon dance of desperation where you pretend that he's going to come back or something, and the Pope is arrested. I don't know. And people are then doing that on a different level with whiteness, and they're doing that on a different level with nationalism as a larger, I guess they believe it's a larger political movement than Trump. And so I feel bad for these people, and I hope that they can change, and I hope that these trials and bringing attention to the consequence and the larger trend that they're a part of, I hope that some people see it and they say, ooh, yeah, we really do have to dig a little bit deeper here. We can't just kind of like revert to, Woodrow Wilsonian imperialism as opposed to, FDR imperialism. I hope that some people do that, and I do think there are a couple of individuals maybe I am reaching, but I understand that at the same time, it's when the mainstream media is pushing for, and all the anti-hate groups are pushing for radicalization along these lines of you're either with the mainstream or you're reactionary, and you can't do anything independent from our dynamic. I understand that's where 99% of people are going to go, and everybody else feels the need to be forced to choose a side, and it makes sense. And I think I fall into it as much as anybody else. And there's like a necessary left-right paradigm, in-group, out-group paradigm, tribalism that everybody's forced into, and there's almost no way around it. But I still have hope. I still have hope that despite everything, there is opportunity for change. I hate to see people's lives ruined. I hate to see people fight for nothing. I hate to see that warrior spirit, which is so concerned with honor and truth and justice, be wasted on concepts that were invented by a previous version of the billionaire class that doesn't care about them, and that all the things that they want are not going to be fulfilled in those. So in a perfect world, I guess we could dismiss these cases because they are a product of moral panic. They're not about finding justice. They're not about helping victimized non-white peoples. We could dismiss them, and the people involved could be educated, and knowing that their wants and needs and desires can be better sought through a deeper religious paradigm rather than reactionary racialism. I don't want to punish people for being misguided and searching for answers in the wrong place. And what I see ultimately is that when people are bankrupted and censored and silenced and attacked, that is when they become reactionaries. When you say, I'm not going to engage with you, I'm not going to argue with you, I'm just going to shut you up and destroy your life, that's when people are like, okay, I guess I'm going to be a martyr for whiteness now. And that's very sad. And so I guess ultimately I'll say I would like to see these cases dismissed. Of course, they're not going to be. And so, there's I guess the next best thing. And it does make me feel bad that this is happening because it's for the benefit of the billionaire class and not for the benefit of black people or anything like that. And so it makes me sad, and I'm not sure what will happen. I also hate for these trials to become false victories for the reactionary right, for them to say, see, now we're winning again. It's like when Donald Trump won, it gave these people a lot of false hope that I think is destructive and ruined more lives than it would have otherwise. So there's no perfect solution here. There's bad outcomes on either side. But I guess, I side more on let's not ruin people's lives for being misguided. Let's educate them. Because if you go ahead and you just start trying to make martyrs out of people, I think that causes exactly what the billionaire class wants, which is they want people to dig their heels into dead ideas and to retrograde structures so that they're easily fit into the scapegoat model that's easily controlled and provides more fodder for aggressive moralization from white liberals. So that's my take. It's sad to see, and it's hard to deal with for me on a personal level because I see people as human beings, as not just as ideological opponents, even though it might not always appear that way, because I get frustrated, but I think there's a human cost to all of this that needs to be recognized, even if people will not grant me any sympathy and they'll just call me a Jew and say that I deserve the worst. I guess I blame the sin and not the sinner. I blame the billionaire class for creating these structures of resentment that are reactionary and a mirror image and not real paths to power. And I blame those things, and I see these people as trapped in an unproductive hatred and a misguided blaming. And I want to see them liberated for that, and I do have sympathy for them. Thanks for listening. I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.
Nice.
You subscribe. Very good.
Nice. Beautiful.
Very good.
Beautiful. You're going to love it. If you love autism, you're going to love my channel. Okay, great.
All right.